With our conversation, of course, the president has been holding a series of meetings at the union buildings this morning in Pretoria, all of this relating to the COVID-19 with the various stakeholders, business leaders, heads of political parties, and of course, government's National Command Council. He had addressed the nation a bit earlier. Currently, though, we have Mzwandile Mbeje. He is standing by for SABC News. A very good afternoon to Mzwandile. We do believe that we're going to be getting more updates as to what has actually transpired in those meetings, and I do believe that you have in hand with you the presidential spokesperson Khusela Diko.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we continue as we wait for the time when the president will address the nation. He's continuing with engaging various stakeholders. Earlier, he came out with the political parties that hadn't got the opportunity to speak when he was addressing the media in Parliament. And of course, the business sector, they were also here. So he's busy with that engagements. Right now, though, he is chairing the National Command Council that he set up to deal with the issue of the virus. But of course, as those engagements continue, so the developments continue elsewhere as well. The SABC there spoke to Reverend Meshoe, who confessed, or rather who admitted that he did have an interaction with some of those 5 people that have tested positive in Bloemfontein. And you'd remember that a few days later, Reverend Meshoe was seen in Parliament next to the President. So we're speaking to the presidential spokesperson, Khusela Diko, to find out if this has been brought to them, and is the President taking any measures in case something could have gone wrong. Remember, Khusela, that the virus, the way it's spreading. So once someone confesses that they've been with you and then you're getting tested positive, so there's immediately a worry around those. So has the president been made aware of Reverend Meshoe?
Let me take some social distance myself here, President. Yes, the presidency is aware that Reverend Meshoe is said to have been part of the grouping in Bloemfontein. I think it was a conference that he had attended. Now, I just want to emphasize the point that there's absolutely no need to panic. There's no need to be anxious at this point. Reverend Meshoe has not been diagnosed with coronavirus, nor is he exhibiting symptoms thereof. The Minister of Health and I think the Health Department officials have been in touch with him. He is subjecting himself to the necessary tests to ascertain indeed whether that the contact that he had in Bloemfontein would have led to the virus being transmitted to him. At this point, he is well. As you indicated, he was in a meeting with the President on Tuesday, and only once the test results from Reverend Meshoe are known will then the next step of the protocols be engaged. So at this point, we're following all necessary protocols around the President, like all of us should be doing, ensuring that you maintain the necessary distance that you're supposed to maintain, ensure that you sanitize, you wash your hands as often as possible, and really, I think starting to impress upon South Africans the need to ensure that we maximize the social distance, staying at home as much as possible. So those protocols are there and they're being followed, and at this point there's absolutely no reason to panic or worry around issues concerning the President.
But perhaps I'm just thinking aloud here. We've seen, for example, in America, where President Trump, I think, came into contact with the chief of staff of the president of Brazil. And of course, he had to go for tests. And I think Mike Pence as well, the vice president in the U.S., his staff testing positive, and then, of course, also taking tests. So perhaps as just to show South Africans there that you can test and then you can show leadership by actions as well. So is he not going to go that direction?
We are really urging South Africans, Brazil, to follow the protocols. The last thing that you want is to trigger a situation of panic testing in the country. The Department of Health has been very specific on who needs to be tested, and those are people who would be exhibiting signs or symptoms of the coronavirus. So these would include people who've got a raised fever, these would include people who have a dry cough, people who have been traveling recently internationally, especially to those high-risk countries. So we are not wanting to set off a rush where everybody wants to go and test. I think in terms of the regulations and the protocols that have been aligned by the Department of Health, we will know when it is time to do so. Still, nonetheless, having said that, as indicated, is that we will watch the situation around Reverend Meshoe quite closely, and we will be guided again by those protocols should those who were then in contact with Reverend Meshoe after that need to be tested. You'll remember that should he test positive for the coronavirus, then immediately it triggers that process where those who were contacts around him are then traced and then themselves requested to subject themselves to self-isolation and later testing. So those protocols are in place and they have been working superbly at this point in time, and we continue to urge all South Africans, as the President will, to follow those protocols.
Well, I know you're rushing to a meeting, but just one more question. South Africans are saying they want to know the exact time the President is going to be addressing them. I know you've said somewhere in the evening or late afternoon, but what time?
The President is in a series of consultations. You said so yourself that he had met business this morning. He obviously had that courtesy call with the political parties represented in Parliament, and right now he's chairing the meeting of the National Command Council. Now, we have thought that it's prudent to allow those meetings to unfold, to give them the time that they require to conclude their business without exerting extra pressure on them, because the meeting of the National Command Council, for example, will be receiving an assessment of the implementation of the directives that the President had set out last Sunday. So how far have we gone? Are we beginning to see any results being yielded by the approach that the President had announced? Is there a need perhaps to look at further additional measures? But also that meeting with business earlier, it also discussed what we're calling the economic relief measures. So how do we ensure that we protect households as well as businesses during this very, very strenuous period? So those are critical discussions. And I think what we can assure the nation is that once the President has completed those particular discussions, he'll obviously apply his mind to the issues that are raised, and we will announce, ahead of time what time exactly the President will be addressing.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that's the presidential spokesperson, Khusela Diko, basically telling us that they are watching developments very closely around Reverend Meshoe. Remember, he was with those 5 people in the Free State who tested positive. But of course, should anything develop otherwise, they say they will follow the proper protocols and perhaps subject all those who have been in close proximity with Reverend Meshoe to testing.
Thank you very much, Mzwandile Mbeje, for SABC News. Just taking us through, of course, some of the comments there on the sidelines from the presidential spokesperson, Khusela Diko, of course, on the backdrop of that information that Reverend Kenneth Meshoe of the ACDP had come into contact with 5 or several people who have confirmed positive for COVID-19 at a church service in the Free State. The presidency at this point in time says that they are aware, they are going to be awaiting the results of the Reverend before taking any other measures going forward. We'll keep you updated on that. Also giving us more details around the address post that National Command meeting, which is currently taking place. We are expecting a full address from the presidency later this afternoon or early evening. We'll continue to give you more updates on that. Well,